Hello and welcome to SMPD, the podcast where we look back at the shows that shaped our childhood. I am Chris Bolton. With me, as always, my partner in podcasting, Mr. Mark Williams.
Hello.
And this episode, we are looking back at, I think, a favourite of both of ours. Clarissa explains it all. But before we do that, we have some feedback, as we do have on occasion. We always like to read it out, as regular listeners will know. So I think we've got feedback on two fronts, actually. First and foremost, Mark sent me a message in the week. You did watch Raggy Dolls with your children.
Yes, I did.
And
well,
what did
I
your
say
children
that.
think of
I
it?
watched it and they kind of went, can we go now?
Okay, so there we go.
Yeah.
So I did say I'd be
Lasted
interested
about
to see.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it lasted a couple of minutes, but I mean, and I think that we talked about it last time when we were talking about, the animation's fairly crappy, the performance isn't brilliant, the storyline's not there, and why would they watch that when they can watch anything on Disney Plus or anything on Netflix that's kid appropriate? Before I get the complaints there.
Well,
But so I mean, there's in general the quality of animation is vastly improved since the 80s, as you can imagine. We're 30 plus years removed. But yeah, they just weren't interested in this. Nothing happened, and they were just like, yeah, whatever, bored.
it's a shame because I did wonder whether it would still hold up for modern kids, and I guess it doesn't then. So that's question answered. That was something I was curious about. So I thought other listeners may like to know as well, just because we threw it out there at the end of the last show. But we have had some feedback in about Raggy Dolls as well, specifically, haven't we?
Yeah, we have. So we had a fairly lengthy post on the episode from Arthur Adams. So thank you for listening, Arthur, and reaching out. I'll read it in full, and then we'll go back through it. And there's a few points which I'm not quite in agreement on, but we'll take them as we come.
That's part of feedback. We're not.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's
it's great.
it.
If we can encourage debate, that's great. And look, not everybody's going to agree with us. Christ, half the time we don't even agree with ourselves.
Well,
so
yeah,
that's all good.
Okay. So this is what Arthur had to say. Even when you do a late replacement podcast, how can you know so little about the writer, narrator, and composer/performer of the theme tune? Yes, he was the same person who was the wizard in Puddle Lane. His surname rhymes with Guinness, so apologies for that. That was my fault. But reading off the screen, you kind of go with what you go with. So his surname rhymes with Guinness, and he was a musician rather than an actor. He was a founder member of the Bonzo Dog Doodah Band and a collaborator with Monty Python. He appeared with Eric Idle in Rutland Weekend Television, which went on to spawn the Ruttles, for whom he wrote all of the songs. You should also check out the Innis Book of Records, which has recently appeared on YouTube, hosted by someone using the handle Cleops. Also, the number of suppositions you make, which then lead you to decide about things that happen behind the scenes and why these decisions were made without knowing either the budgetary constraints or how many of these decisions were due to the program makers or ITV, was unforgivable. Incidentally, Neil took time off from his career as a musician and instead took the jobs of Raggy Dolls and Puddle Lane so he could spend time with his young family while they were growing up. You'll dig at him for doing everything, including writing and singing the theme tune, was a little bit below the belt, as writing and performing songs had, until then, been his main occupation. Your comments about inclusivity show a woeful knowledge of what life was like in the mid-80s and early 90s. This is probably explained by your age, but you really shouldn't jump to conclusions. My daughter used to watch Raggy Dolls, and whenever I saw it, I thought it was a bold move to use characters whose outer traits were less than perfect, but who internally were just as good, if not better, than so-called perfect toys or people. The character of Sad Sack was inspired by the name being used in the lyrics of Jailhouse Rock, wherein he is said to be sat in a corner weeping all alone. So not really anything to do with Eeyore, although they do have similar personalities. I could go on, but it's time to get on with preparing the tea, so I won't. And you're right, you do spend way too much time off topic. But you got the last bit right.
I was going to say you're right about that, Arthur. So well, first and foremost, thanks for writing in, and thanks for putting us straight about Neil Innis's name. Then it rhymes with Guinness, it's Innis, and Innis Book of Records, incidentally, is a very good pun in that case. There's a lot to unpack there, isn't it? First and foremost, I hope you enjoyed your tea. You could have told us what you were having, because now inquiring minds want to know.
Yeah, I'm kind of hungry now as well.
Yeah, but yeah, there's a lot to unpack there. First of all, how can we not know? Well, quite frankly, we have never and have always been open about the fact that we do very little research for this show. That is not the kind of onus behind the show. This show started as a way of us looking back at these cartoons that we remember so fondly and seeing whether they hold up today and what they mean to us now as men rapidly approaching middle age, and how they hold up to modern life. Now, very early on in our first episodes, we did start doing extensive research, and those episodes were very, very dry and very, very long. And I think by about episode 2, we had both decided that's not what we want to be. We're not a history podcast.
No, we're not a fact file show, and that content does exist if that's what you want. And so all power to I say the Guinness Book of Records as an example. If that's what you want from people, then that content is there. But that wasn't a show that we were interested in doing. And I think that what you pick up from those first couple of shows, if we're bored, we're not really going to hold anyone's attention very well.
No. And look, there are absolutely shows that we could talk about at length without doing research. Raggy Dolls wasn't one of them. But we also felt that we didn't need to do extensive research to even hold a conversation about it, because we both remembered it so well, and it was something we remembered fondly. Now, as far as the suppositions go, I don't think we did make that many suppositions, and where we did, we prefixed them.
Yeah, we made a couple, but we did preface it with, we don't know, but I'd imagine. And that is based on what we've found from other shows. So we were quite upfront about that.
Yeah, so I mean, again, sorry if you took offense to that, Arthur. I don't know where that came from, to be honest. But what I'm saying in a roundabout way is, I think maybe you just don't like our shtick, which is fine. We're not for everybody.
No, you're not the only one.
Yeah, I mean, Christ, I annoy myself.
Our own wives don't listen, so you know.
Yeah, and I annoy myself most of the time. But nevertheless, as we always say, it's when people disagree with us, I'm fascinated to hear that. And it is great that your daughter enjoyed Raggy Dolls, and I wish I did when I rewatched it, because I certainly did as a child as well. And it's always interesting to learn new things. I didn't know any of that stuff about Neil Innes. I was vaguely aware of the Bonzo Dog Doodah Band, never heard anything by them.
I think we did mention the collaboration with Monty Python, because that appeared on whatever page I was reading as we were recording.
Possibly, I don't know.
I mean, it was very much he worked with Monty Python. Blah 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 blah. That was kind of it.
So who knows? I can't remember what happened 2 days ago. So I'm not sure. But no, as I say, thank you for writing in. I'm glad that there are people out there to whom this show matters so much that they got impassioned enough to write in, because as I said on the show, it left me feeling kind of meh, and I wanted more from it. And so clearly there is more from it that people are getting, and I think that's great. And I really do appreciate you writing in to correct us on that. However, it's not going to change my opinion, I'm afraid. I still think that the show was not quite everything it could be. I don't know where the sad sack thing came from, unless, again, maybe that's something that we didn't pick up on research. But if he was based in any way on a character from Jailhouse Rock, that, as far as I'm aware, was never mentioned in any of the episodes I saw, and certainly didn't come through in the text.
I didn't pick that up either. I mean, the comment about not having anything to do with Eeyore, again, we compared him to Eeyore. We didn't say that there was any relation other than they had similar personalities. So you've kind of taken the words out of my mouth there.
I mean, look, I'm not going to turn this into a defensive rant or anything. As I say, everybody's opinion is valid here, and we absolutely encourage this kind of discussion. I just feel like maybe there's actually supposition made in the email as to, I mean, the comments about us not knowing what life was like in the 80s. Well, we both grew up in the 80s. We were there
in fairly poor areas as well.
Well, I was just about to say moreover, we did actually preface that whole conversation with, actually, in the areas we grew up in, this is what society looked like. That was the very start of that conversation. So we were speaking from experience there. So look, if where we grew up isn't the same as where you grew up, and I'm sure it's not the same as where 90% of our audience grew up, because I know we get a lot of overseas listeners as well. So that's why we preface these things. Diversity is a wonderful thing and should be celebrated. So if you've got a different experience to us, exactly, then that's all cool. But we did definitely prefix that. So yeah. Anyway, I don't want to spend all day sort of just addressing these points. I thank you very much, as I said, for writing in, and thank you for the information when we come to do our Puddle Lane podcast, which we will. Obviously we've got that moving forward, so that's really helpful. And as we always say, if we put our foot in it and if we get something wrong, listeners, correct us, because you all know, Christ, I say it every episode, I do fuck all research, and I'm not ashamed. The whole point of this podcast is to go back to these shows cold. If we remember stuff, it's because we genuinely remember stuff. There are things rattling around in my brain. I've got far more useless information than any sane person should have. So when I throw these things out, and it's quite often why I say things like, I'm not sure, or don't hold me to this, but If we do any research at all, it's Mark that'll do it. So,
and as I've said many times, the extent of my research is I have the wiki page open in front of me and I'm reading it as we're talking. And if something pops up, brilliant. And if it doesn't, I just move on.
yeah.
So it's not as if we go out of our way to actually research it.
No.
And yeah, no, maybe maybe that's what some people are looking for, and that content is online. That content is around. It's just not ready for us.
And look, I get it. I have shows that I am so passionate about that if I hear people just mishandling them or mentioning names of writers, directors, cast members wrong, it irks me no end. And this is clearly that, for Arthur. Clearly so. We've clearly touched a nerve. And so I'm sorry about that, but it ain't going to change the nature of the show, I'm afraid. So
no, and
we are what we are.
I mean, as I said, the whole point of us doing this show is that, by and large, we watch stuff that we watched when we were kids, which was a fucking long time ago, and we stuff that we remember fondly, and then we see if it still holds up. And that really doesn't work as a fact file, and that's kind of what we are, and that's what we did. And I think that in some of our previous episodes we've raved about stuff. In others, we've absolutely ragged on it because it just doesn't hold up. And so certain things are problematic now. Certain things would have been problematic at the time and just kind of got swept under the carpet. So yeah, we just kind of go. We kind of go what it feels like now, and that's all we can really do.
And we will continue to do so. So nevertheless, as I say, thank you all for writing in. If anybody else, incidentally, wants to weigh in on this topic, then please do. We will read any and all feedback. We won't shy away from anything. If we get things wrong, I'm the first one to say we fucked this up and we got this wrong. So apologies to the estate of the late Neil Innes, wherever they are. Maybe Arthur's one
France,
of them.
I believe.
Well, there you go. So yeah, we fucked his name up. It won't be the first or the last name we fuck up, and it's not something I'm going to lose sleep over. And again, sorry if that rubs any listeners up the wrong way, but here I am. Come at me if you want. Anyway, let's put that to bed. Move on. We're not here to talk about Raggy Dolls again. That is done and dusted. We did an hour and change on it last episode. It was quite long. We're here this episode to look back, as I said, right back at the start, and as you would have said from gathered from the theme tune, to look at Clarissa Explains It All. It's a big one for me.
Yeah,
one of the ones I was nervous about. So
yeah, I mean, I came to this. This was on Live and Kicking, wasn't it? When Going Live finished on BBC One on Saturday morning, and they moved to Live and Kicking. They upgraded. They moved for a new audience, and this was one of their early things. They had this and X-Men, didn't they?
I'm not sure. This may very well have been on Live and Kicking. I know I used to watch X-Men on Saturday. Well. I was going to say I know it because it was on literally every fucking day at about, basically between like 5 and 6, or might have been 6 and 7. I'm not sure, but it was like a late evening slot, early afternoon, late evening when you're that age anyway. Slot on Nickelodeon, and it sort of filled an hour, and then slowly all of the other shows started drifting through, because this was, I don't know if it was, but I'm pretty sure it was the first through the door.
This was one of 7.
Yeah,
and this 7 was original shows they did.
Yeah, and when I say first through the doors, it was like after this, you got the likes of your Sister, your Keenan and Kel, as we talked about on the Sabrina the Teenage Witch episode. Is like this was kind of, I feel, the genesis of that sort of wholesome American teen comedy live action show.
Yeah, I mean, and the thing is that you had stuff in the past where you had things like Happy Days, and then it kind of died off. And then you went into your more conventional sitcom, your family sitcoms, things like Family Ties and Full House and stuff like that. And then this was kind of a reintroduction to stuff like that. And it really did kick off because all of a sudden you had all these cable channels. You had Nickelodeon. You had stuff like Saved by the Bell and all the various identical versions of that came through with slightly different hooks. So, and this really did sort of kick this off. And then by the time this went into Sabrina, I mean, the end of this show, she goes off to intern at a magazine or a newspaper, and instead of going off to college, and then by the time Sabrina starts, you get the end of high school, her going off to college, and then going off to become a reporter. So there's kind of a thematic element to it as well. But yeah, I mean, this one, I say it was on. As I didn't have, we didn't have cable or Sky, so I saw it on Live and Kicking. And one thing I do remember quite vividly was Andy Peters, God bless him. One of the characters.
Hang on. He's not dead, is he?
No. He's just
Jesus
a shadow
Christ.
of the man he used to be.
The way you said that, I'm like, what the fuck is Andy? Did nobody tell me that Andy Peters died? What the fuck?
It's 2020. He might have done.
that was genuinely a concern.
No,
I was like,
as far
whoa,
as I'm
hold on.
aware, I mean, he pops up on Chris Moyles every now and again, so I think he's still alive. He's just a national treasure, so that's why I threw that in.
Yeah, I'd
But
be gutted if he died.
one of the characters he played in some of the skits they done live kicking, he had a fairly, given the age difference that there would have been between him and Melissa Joan Hart, he had a fairly unhealthy obsession with the character, and that always sticks in my memory.
I had a fairly unhealthy obsession with the character as well, but
Yeah,
I
but
was age appropriate. So
you're age appropriate. You know, I mean, she would have been about 16, 17, and he would have been about 30.
yeah, well, I mean, Clarissa in the show is more like kind of 13, 14 when
Yeah, I
it
think
starts.
she's supposed to be 14 when it starts.
Yeah, I mean, as the show goes on, she ages appropriately, and you can tell because she grows 2 teeth. You can tell. You watch the early episodes.
Yes.
Look, I said about useless facts. Okay, useless fact I do know about Melissa Joan Hart. She had some sort of issue when she was younger where she was missing 2 teeth. I think she was born without them. And you see them in early Clarissa where she's just got, and I know because I got the same fucking thing, and you probably can't see it on camera, but I have the exact same issue.
Yeah, so like slightly gangly one, a set back a bit.
Yep.
Yeah, I've got on the bottom as well.
Yeah, so it stuck out to me a lot as a kid because I was like, oh, she's got the same teeth as me. And then she fixed them. And I was like, what's happened there? How do I do that?
Money.
How do I do that? So I went to the dentist and they told me I could have a brace if I wanted one. Fuck that.
No, I went the other way. I had one. I wore it for 2 years. I wore it every fucking day. I had it taken out on the Wednesday. On the Thursday night, I played rugby for the school. I kicked it in the mouth and undid the fucking lot of it.
I had one, wore it for all of a day, decided I didn't like it, left a horrible taste in my mouth, and I just couldn't get on with something being stuck in my mouth. Leave that. Leave it.
Yeah, I was going down the case because you're a fat kid. I wasn't going down cock because that would be too easy.
Yeah, I was a fat kid. Yeah. Okay. Off topic already. Arthur's fucking fuming already with us. All right.
Let's be fair, he ain't still listening.
No, he probably stopped listening after we rebutted the Raggy Dolls email. If he even bothers listening to this one, I don't know. Incidentally, if we do spend too much time off topic, genuine listeners, do write in like Arthur did and let us know. We do. I mean, again, we try and keep this thing on the rails, but fucking hell, if you've listened to us for long enough, you know by now.
Yeah, I mean, we've been doing this show for 3.5 years. You kind of know by now what you're getting.
Yeah, so somewhere in there we'll randomly talk about the actual show that we're talking about. But anyway, to get back on topic, yeah. So you can see her aging; she grows teeth, and you don't so much notice it with her though as you do with Ferguson, who basically just becomes an adult like overnight.
You notice it with Sam as well, because if you look at I can't remember his name, the actor, but if you look at him on the credits, he what's his name, Sean O'Neill. He flips in on his skateboard. He's kind of skinny, he's kind of short, a little bit goofy looking, and then by the time you get to the fifth season, he's really bulked out. He's really sort of grown into his body.
Well, again, we talked about this weirdly. I mean, obviously there's going to be throwbacks to the Sabrina episode, but we did talk about this on the Sabrina episode as well. How it's easier with teenage girls to keep them in these roles for longer because boys just visibly age quicker.
Yeah. The shape of their faces changes. Obviously, you get the issue with hair and shit like that, but the definition changes and like the shape of your face changes. You broaden out a bit. Yeah. So your shoulders get broader, your chest gets broader, and yeah, it is a lot harder to disguise that. Whereas it's quite common that you see women in their late teens, early 20s, even playing teenagers. Yeah. On TV show, it's practically normal on American television.
Yeah, it's accepted. You go for somebody in their early 20s to play a 16-year-old. That's just what happens. Didn't necessarily happen here. Melissa Joan Hart wasn't massively older than Clarissa, I seem to remember. I think she was kind of 15, 16.
I think by the time we finished, she was about 19, 20, I think.
Yeah, and then went on into Sabrina.
Well, I think she went in playing a sort of 17, 18-year-old, didn't she? Because it was like her end of high school and going into college.
I think when it started, didn't we say she was
16? Was she was 16?
It was
her 16th birthday, wasn't it? That's when she got her powers. Yeah, so you had her last 2 years of high school. As the first 2 years of that show, and then you went into college. Yeah,
whereas with Clarissa, pretty much the whole thing. Weirdly though, for a show that like the whole thing, she's a schoolgirl. Yeah. She's in school, but you spend very little time actually at the high school. Most of this, and look, it's a sitcom, and most of it is spent at the Darling's house. It's just in various rooms. It's clearly I'm going to make suppositions here. It's clearly very cheap to produce, down to the things.
But this was the model, wasn't it? You have
Yes,
a set, and
yes,
you just
this
go
was
back. And even if you look at some of the biggest grossing sitcoms, you look at things like Friends. That was predominantly done in 2 sets, or 3 sets. You had the coffee house and the 2 apartments, and it's only as it went along, and they got them. They started. The stories had to expand, and they couldn't just have 6 people sat around in a coffee house all day. That they had to start introducing. They introduced Ross's apartment, they introduced places where people worked. They had stuff outside. Like, outside? Who the fuck shoots outside?
Yeah, but I mean the weird thing with Clarissa, other than her maybe being on the porch of the house and stuff like that, you didn't really
Yeah.
get a lot of external shots. So it was all studio. I mean, it was the Nickelodeon Studios in Florida. We've talked about that on this show before. It was all shot there in Orlando. But one of the weird things was, like, yes, you'd have the Darlings house set up so they could shoot there very easily, but then there'd be these random flights of fancy every episode. It was thematic to the show. She'd just go off on a random flight of fancy, and all of a sudden they'd be in some fantastical setting which would require another set to be built.
Yeah.
But you are at Universal Studios, so there's half a chance there are things lying around that you can use. There's sound stages there, and away you go, I guess. So there was that about it. But I think one of the first things that struck me with this, and as I spoke about on Spring of the Teen Switch as well, I loved this show. I was exactly the right age for it.
Yeah.
So I remember it very, very fondly. It was always fucking on, so I just watched it. I've seen episodes of this multiple times. Again, as I said on the Sabrina show. But the first thing that struck me about this when I started rewatching it is this is the most 90s show ever been made. And I was kind of expecting it to be, so that didn't surprise me going in. And I think had it not been horribly 90s, I actually would have been disappointed. But it's like as soon as those credits hit, from the music to the fashions, to the font, to the dodgy video effects of her writing on screen, it just
even the straight to camera shit as well.
Yeah,
it just all screamed it straight away. I mean, I watched. I struggled to find. I struggled to find stuff being available. And like even when you look at the stuff that's available on Amazon, there are sets available, and there are box sets of like 4 or 5 episodes. You can't buy a season anywhere.
No, it's very difficult.
It's very difficult to track down. I did find on Nick Hits, which is a streaming service in America, they're all on there. However, you get it through Prime, but you have to have an American credit card to do it.
Oh shit! I didn't know that was a thing.
I found it about an hour ago. But yeah, you need an American.
That.
Yeah,
there's got to be a way around that. That's got me written all over it.
So I mean, I was going to sign up for a free trial of that. It was 7-day free trial. I thought I can blitz this in a couple of hours. But no, I couldn't, because my bank card is British, and I couldn't do it. But yes, they're all on there. But trying to track down entire runs was very difficult. But what I did manage to track down was the first episode, and you get the whole opening shtick of her in the bathroom, and she's explaining who she is, who her family are, what she doesn't like, her name, things she likes and dislikes, because then it's all out of the way, and they haven't got to rely on her doing this every episode. So we learn straight away that she's too young, but she thinks she can drive, and she lives on junk food, and she hates home haircuts. So we find that out in the very first scene, and then it's done. We never have to hear about it again. It's just anytime driving comes up, now we know, that's because she wants to drive. She thinks she's responsible enough to drive, and she might not be old enough, but she can do it anyway. So we know that, and that's just stuff that's imprinted from that very first scene. We learn about Ferguson and the fact he's a little toad, subjectively, because obviously that's her perspective on it. But so we learn about him straight away. We learn about her parents straight away, and then we don't need to worry about it again. So when they're talking about their jobs, we know that he's an architect. We know that she works in a museum that deals with kids. So we don't need to be introduced to that time and time again. So when she starts talking, I said it later in the episode, or in one of the subsequent episodes, she talks about her taking the mother talks about the kids going to work with her to deal with to do some of the activities with the kids. We know what that's about. We don't have to explain to us again what she's doing. And I think that was really well seeded, even though it's a fairly throwaway scene. It's only about 2 minutes, and then we're into introducing Sam. But it just sort of kind of sticks with you.
I mean, there's something, I think part of the appeal of the show Then, and to be fair, rewatching it now as well, obviously I don't connect with the material in the same way that I did when I was younger. But as we've talked about before with these shows, you can kind of throw back to yourself in that period, and particularly with this being so 90s. Part of it is that conversational nature of very much it. The angle I think they played for and got is this is very much just feels like you're hanging out with a friend.
Yeah.
She is
And that,
talking to you. She is
yeah,
telling you what's happened this week. And that is how the stories are framed. They are framed via Clarissa breaking the fourth wall, delivering it straight to camera, and literally saying, this is what's going on this week. This is what I'm doing about it. And this is what's happened as a result of that. And, you know, these stories, if you can call them that, are incredibly loosely plotted.
yeah,
Incredibly loosely plotted. It's far more conversational. And some episodes are more like a series of skits that just hang together. And again, we talked about this with Sabrina, just hang together on just the sheer charisma of Melissa Joan Hart, just delivering that to camera. And look, she's not as polished in this as she is by the time she gets to Sabrina, which of course she's not, because this is much earlier on. But it's clear that the star power is still there with her. So there is something, I think, and it's not the best show ever made by any stretch of the imagination. There are faults, and we'll get onto them. But there is just something magnetic about that style and about her that just gives the whole thing a pass in a lot of areas for me. It's easygoing, just like Sabrina was as well, you know. So like there is, like I said, things are incredibly loosely plotted, but because it's a sitcom and because it's conversational and because like they're just throwing gags out left, right, and center, you just kind of go with it as long as they kind of stick the landing.
Yeah.
You just go, yeah, okay, and you've forgotten about that when I moved on to the next one.
Yeah,
So,
I mean, I think the thing as well, I mean, you look at if you were to do this with adults, you would just say, right, there's the scene, fucking improv it, off you go.
well, yeah, exactly. This is our loose story this week, and you know, and you could, yes, this is aimed at teenagers and well, sort of older kids and early.
I was going to say
really
tweens, really, wasn't that?
Yeah, this is where this is pitched, but you could age this up had it run long enough, and we said this with Sabrina as well, and actually Sabrina did start doing this. You could age this up appropriately. You could take this model and you could definitely age it up, you know. And we started to see this, and look, Clarissa is an imitator in and of itself of this regard, but we did start to see this in sitcoms then of the mid-90s, where you would just build around a star, and this was their life for this week in an imagined role. And that was very much a thing, and Clarissa very much falls into that, other than it being Clarissa and not Melissa Joan Hart. It is the Clarissa show, essentially. Clarissa is her own thing. So I already knew all of that going in, and I already knew there was going to be canned laughter, and I already knew that probably some of the jokes were going to be corny, so I prepped myself for all of this. It was probably about as bad as I'd expected to be on that level. You know, some of the jokes are incredibly corny. They were in Sabrina as well. The canned laughter, I spoke about this on the Sabrina episode, annoys the living piss. I fucking hate canned laughter. It ruins everything. So that's not good. But actually, you know what? It does hang together, and I think all the performances are great as well. I mean, some are better than others. Some are admittedly better than others.
Is ropey as all fuck.
She's not so bad. I mean, the dad is definitely better.
I mean, the dad very much plays off the annoying dad trope.
But then when he needs to be, he gives good sincere dad as well when he needs to be.
So he did very well. The mother I thought she was a bit too ditzy. She was a bit kind of flaky, and it's just like
that's her character though, isn't it? You know, she works at a children's museum, and you know,
it didn't ring true for what they tried to set up with her. Didn't ring true for the way she performed it. I think there were too many bits where, as you know, the father, whose name was Joe O'Connor, when he had to be sincere, he was sincere. When he had to be slightly stern or slightly more authoritative, he was. Whereas Elizabeth Hess, who played the mother, she was kind of one note, and there wasn't really any nuance to the performance. She was just a little bit, I don't know, just kind of not. She was there in body, but not in spirit.
Yeah, I guess, yeah, I can see it. I can see how she's one note. Yeah, I'll give you that one. She didn't annoy me though, particularly. Not as much as
Well,
Ferguson does, but then his character
that's what
is
Ferguson's
to be
for.
annoying. Yeah, that's right. You can't blame the guy for that. That is the character. He's doing
Yeah,
what he's been instructed to do. It's not helped by the canned laughter. That is the problem because
yeah,
he's there pitching for the stalls. And then you get the canned laughter in the background. And actually, in the audio mix on, maybe it was just because I watched a lot of these on a phone, and I have watched a lot of these. They, I know Mark had difficulty finding them, but they are out there if you want them. Again, via legal means, there is an actual channel out there that you can find
yeah.
them on. So I've not done anything illegitimate to get them, but they are out there. So I have watched a lot of them, and a lot of that canned laughter seems to be low in the mix. Like I said, now I was watching it on a phone, so maybe it was that, but it seems really low in the audio
Yeah.
mix on every episode I've watched, and that doesn't help either because you're like, is that supposed to be funny or
Yeah,
not? And I feel like
yeah.
as much as I hate canned laughter, if you're going for it,
Yeah.
go for it. You know,
That's
like how
that's the thing.
sometimes it does that build, like canned laughter, they do that slight build with it, and then it's like somebody all of a sudden just bashes the fader all the way up to the top.
It's
They
kind
never
of
do that.
it's that again. It's the sort of the sitcom theory, if you like, whereby you have three jokes, three laughs per page, or three gags per setup. So you'd say, right, the first one you get you get a bit of a potato out of. The second one, oh fuck, they've done it again. The third one you get fucking guffaws and belly laughs because they've really gone to town on the same joke. That's kind of the way it's set up to. No, that's kind of the way they set it up. And especially when you get canned laughter, that's what they do is they play it. No, it's low and then it's higher, and then by the time you get to the end, it's fucking it's massive. And it's why canned laughter doesn't work because you can kind of pick it out. Generally, in this you can't because it is so low and it's kind of like they have just one clip and they just play it, but they just play it over and over and over again. So the laughter is always the same. You don't get the different responses. I mean, I watched oh fuck, I can't remember what episode it was. It was a late series episode of Coupling, which Steve Moffat wrote and had Jack Davenport in, and there's an episode in that where they had an audience of 200 and so all the stuff that was inside and all the sort of stuff in the sets they did inside, and they played videos of the external bits to get the responses and stuff like that. But I always thought that was kind of laughter. And then there's an episode where two people are on screen together, and the rest of the cast are watching from the side because they've got to come in. And it's pointed out in the commentary, and if you listen to it, you can hear it. But Jack Davenport absolutely fucking pisses himself in the middle of this take, which then causes the laughter in the studio to get a lot louder because they're all laughing at him, laughing at the shot, at the shot. And it's one of those that when it's done well, you don't notice.
Yeah.
But when it's done poorly, it really does show up the product because it makes it makes it sound like the jokes haven't landed.
Yes, and that's what it feels like. Yeah, I'd almost prefer they just. Well, I would always prefer there wasn't canned laughter, but definitely here it's like, don't half-ass it. If you're going to do it,
Yeah,
you've got to go for it.
If it's there, you've got to use it. And if you're not going to use it, then just save the money.
And again, I think with this show especially, because it invites that sincerity, because you're in Clarissa's bedroom with her and she's inviting you in and it's intimate and she's talking straight to you. So you're either in her bedroom or she's on the porch or she's sat at the kitchen table and you're just hanging out with her.
Yeah.
I feel like it would work better without that canned laughter because that's just adding this extra element of like, oh yeah, there's also like 200 extra people here. Yeah. It's not just us.
Yeah,
which is very much what it's meant to feel like. Yeah, because while she is addressing the camera, breaking the fourth wall, she's never she's not pitching to the store. She's not talking to an audience at large. She's talking to you. Yes, she's talking to you, and they do that very, very well.
Yeah.
So yeah, the canned laughter annoys me. The performances I think are great. The writing, like I said, there's no sort of specific story. Generally, an episode will have a loose theme. There will be some sort of running narrative through it, like this is Clarissa's problem of the week, but it's generally solved without sort of any major fallout or anything like that. But when you actually look at the writing talent involved in this show,
I was going to say,
it is
fucking chops in here.
Unbelievable. Absolutely unbelievable. I mean, Doug Petrie, for instance.
Yeah, Doug Petrie was the first one. That was the first one jumped at me, Doug Petrie.
I mean,
also Alexa Junge. Apologies if I got your name wrong. But yeah, again, I'm reading on a page.
I feel like this is going to be Mark's thing now. Has Mark pronounced it correctly this week? Please let us know.
But yeah, no. One of the principal writers on one of the later writers on Friends. Suzanne Collins, who wrote The Hunger Games.
I mean, that was a fucking
threw me.
Shocker. That was I saw her name come up on one of the episodes I watched. I was like, is that the same? No, it can't.
That's why I had to look. I've got the list of episodes in front of me, and I saw it, and like, you know, wikis, like, some people have got links, some people haven't on their names and shit. And there was one I thought, isn't that the woman who wrote Hunger Games? No, it wouldn't be, because why would she be writing Clarissa? But then we had it with Rent a Ghost, where was Martina Cole, wasn't it, the author? The very gritty crime author was one of the loons in Rent a Ghost.
It's surprising when you get things like that, isn't it?
People pop up. So yeah, I mean, that was one. There was another one, I can't remember who it was now, but there was another writer who jumped out at me as well. And you're just thinking, there's some serious credentials in this show.
Oh yeah, massively. I mean, just seeing Doug Petrie's name pop up, I was like, hang on, what? And then I remembered that I knew that, but I was like, hang on, how do I not know that, going back to watch Clarissa? And then as soon as his name pops up, I'm like, oh yeah, of course he did. I knew that.
Yeah, I didn't. I had no idea. And I saw his name pop up. I was like, really? That can't be the same one.
Yeah, it is. I'm for the uninitiated there, because Doug Petrie is basically the Whedonverse. He's worked on just about everything Joss Whedon has ever done. Huge.
Some misses as well, though, isn't he?
Well, yeah, but that's the Whedonverse in general, isn't it? That's the Whedonverse in general as well. The hits are hits, but the misses, ooh boy.
Yeah. But yeah, So I mean, that was interesting seeing those names pop up with the writers. I thought that was again, it's telling that it's a good product, because even if it doesn't take too well, or even if it doesn't rate that well, or it doesn't last that long, when you see the writers and what they've got on to do, it's like, well, there's everything they do before it is a calling card. Mm-hmm. So even if this had bombed, you think, well, hang on, these writers have gone on to do other things, so they must be pretty fucking good.
Yeah, and I think where their talent shows, and normally, especially if you listen to any of our other shows, you'll know I'm normally the guy that's absolutely nailing people to the cross if the story isn't tight. That is my thing. If something doesn't make sense in the story, if something is superfluous to the story, I'm the guy that's going, no, that's wrong, that doesn't belong there. But because this is so loosey-goosey, again, I kind of give it a pass on that. And where they're really showing their chops is in their work with these characters.
Yeah.
It is about you know who, and I know it's a sitcom, so they're all broad strokes, but you know who all of these characters are in almost instantly. Like you say, you know who Clarissa is, and her character comes through both in the performance and the writing as well. Yeah. You know who Ferguson is. You know who Sam is. Those characters shine through. And I think that's where the writers have really cut their teeth, is not so much on the plotting, because it literally is like problems of a 14-year-old girl every week.
But I mean, that's what the show was intended to be. So I mean,
absolutely. I'm not criticizing.
Again, they've hit the mark on that.
Yeah, I'm not criticizing it. It does that very well. I would argue it still does that better than anything else. Not that I've watched anything modern that is problems of a 14, because why would I? It's different.
Well, you mean you're not a 14-year-old girl?
No, funnily enough, I've never been a 14-year-old girl.
And it was me thinking you were authentic.
Yeah, but that didn't. I mean, that's another interesting thing about the show, actually, as well. We both remember it very fondly, both, of course, being males, being young boys. And we've talked about how shows are gendered on this show before, and how, it's ridiculous when, like, Transformers introduced the fucking pink Transformer. Yeah. And one of the things I think this does very well is at no point does it become like a girly gossip, stereotypical girl show. It doesn't do that. And later Nickelodeon shows kind of did do that. You kind of had Sister Sister and Kenan and Kel as the exact opposites, where it was like, okay, well, the boys don't really want to watch Sister Sister, so let's throw Kenan and Kel in there.
Yeah.
But there was no need for that, because I actually watched all of those shows as well. Didn't like Kenan and Kel at all, if I'm honest, but I still watched it because it was fucking on, and it came in a block with Sister Sister and Clarissa. Sister Sister I thought was quite good, but I didn't need Kenan and Kel as a sort of response to that, and I don't feel like there's anything in Clarissa that says, oh, well, this is for the girls, even though it's a female lead and all of that.
That was the thing. I mean, it was one of those that I think it was seen as, I mean, I read something here, I can't remember where I read it now, it's not on the wiki page, but it was seen as a bit of a gamble having a female lead in a show that they were trying to kick off a network with or trying to kick off the original programming with, because they were like, well, girls will watch it, but boys won't. And it shocked a lot of people because they actually went, yeah, that's a good show. I'll watch that.
I mean, this is the thing, isn't it? Like, I mean, they're right. There would have been a section of boys at my school, definitely, but I'm not fucking watching that.
Yeah, it's a girl show.
It's girl stuff.
And yeah, I agree.
I've never given a fuck about that. So
no, I said, I can't remember where I would have seen it on Live and Kicking, but I remember reading about it before, be it in a magazine, like a TV guide or something like that. And I remember reading, going, oh, that sounds really interesting. And when this first showed in this country on BBC, it would probably be about 92, 93. It would have been after the original, after the first season aired in the US, and possibly Nickelodeon over here. So I was a bit younger than the character, but I was thinking, oh, that sounds quite interesting, and so I and it's funny because you've got the boy climbs through the neighbor's window, and you've got Ferguson who's a total dickwolf, and it's like, well, yeah, everyone can relate to that because everyone has siblings, or most people have siblings or cousins or friends who are a bit like that, and they can relate to it. So it doesn't matter that it's a female lead. Now, interestingly, Number One got into a show on Netflix recently. It's a science show called Emily's Wonder Lab, and they do experiments like weird fucking science experiments, like how Two used to do. And that's there are only 6 episodes. It's hosted by a petite ginger woman who was 9 months pregnant when they shot it, and she'd spent years hawking this around networks, and they were like, "Kid, boys won't watch it. We won't get the demographic because boys won't watch a science show headed by a girl."
Ridiculous.
And you see the fucking ratings on this thing on Netflix. It's huge. And it's a really good show, and it's them. They do like weird science experiments. No, they make fucking fluorescent paint out of natural stuff. They make a substance called oobleck, which is kind of like ketchup. It's a semi-liquid or semi-solid liquid. So if you put pressure on it, it holds up and it performs differently than if you do different things to it. And it's a really interesting show. Clearly, I took it in because I remembered what that fucking stuff does. But
nothing to do with a petite redhead.
No, Prego's not doing it for me.
Just check. Oh yeah, you did say she was pregnant as well. Yeah,
yeah, she was very heavily pregnant at this point. But it's a really good show. I mean, clearly she's a scientist. She knows what the fuck she's talking about, and she's designed these experiments to make them interesting for kids. And there are 6 kids. That some are black, some are white, some are Asian. Doesn't matter. They're just kids who are there to do the experiments. And it's just again, some are male, some are female, and they all go in and just fuck about for the day. And today we're doing this. Tomorrow we're doing that. Tomorrow we're doing that. And they just said, no, it's a fun show, and there's no reason for everyone to say, oh yeah, boys won't watch that, because at the end of the day, it's gross science shit. Boys will watch it.
Yeah, it's weird, isn't it? I've never understood it. Like I said, I've never understood the need to pitch to one audience or the other. I've never understood why He-Man was a boy show and She-Ra was a girl show, and I will never understand why, for instance, I can watch Are You Afraid of the Dark, but I shouldn't have watched Clarissa apparently because of my gender. But I feel like this just full on sidesteps that, ironically, in the way that we said Raggy Doll sidesteps a lot of the issues with the dolls, in that it just never mentions that at all. It is never a thing that it's a female lead. It is never a thing that she's best friends with a dude. There's never any kind of romantic involvement going to go on there. There's nothing.
They kind of allude, and maybe half a dozen episodes in the later run where they may or may not be developing feelings, and then they go, yeah, no, that's fucking rubbish.
Yeah, it just doesn't.
I saw a clip earlier. I was flicking through YouTube on the Nickelodeon channel, looking at clips, and they had one, and it was like a crushometer, whereby on the one hand they're just friends, and there's the whole friend zone thing, and on the other hand it's potentially something else, and they go through the examples where they're just friends and the examples where they could be a bit more, and it's half a line or a sideways look when the other one's not looking. That happens all of twice, whereas all the friend stuff, that's just off the fucking end of the scale. And he's like, well, whether or not they were playing for it, I don't know, but they didn't need it, and they didn't resort to it. And that's where so many shows over the years have let themselves down, because they find themselves going, all right, what's the natural progression for this show that features very prominently features a girl? What's the natural progression? Right, she's got to pine after a boy. And then at the end, they've either got to get together and it works, or they get together and they ruin each other's lives, but they've got to get together. And 99 times out of 100, that ruins the show.
Yeah, it does, and I think they make a point to sidestep that, and actually, and I again, this is supposition, but I mean, it's so clear to me from watching it that I feel like it's either intentional or it's just inherent to all of the creatives in the show, performers included, that they very carefully do not fall into any of those tropey pitfalls of having a teenage girl lead. You know, Clarissa is smart, she's funny, she talks direct to camera, she is emotionally intelligent as well. She, you know, she never loses her mind and starts giggling over a boy. She doesn't write in a diary. She doesn't get, well, she does write in a diary on occasion, but she writes eloquently. She doesn't, you know, she's not on the yearbook committee. She's not a cheerleader. She's none of those things. She is just a regular girl.
Josephine Average.
Yes, exactly. And they do very well. And I think that's part of the charm of the show. And that is why it did work so well across the gender boundaries, because it literally is like just hanging out with, I mean, loads of my friends in school were female. That was just me. That was the way it was. And it was just like hanging out with friends.
Yeah.
It's what the show felt like.
And that's the same for me as well. I mean, it's something that as you get older, other people make an issue of it for you. And again, the easy way out of this, or the easy way to do this, would have been to make an issue whereby other friends or classmates would have started insinuating things, or would have started making comments, or they play up the fact that one has a boyfriend or a girlfriend and the other one is jealous. And you've seen that done so many times.
Yeah.
And never does it work. I mean, irrespective of how it works in the story, it never works out well for the show.
No,
because ultimately you lose all control of your characters. Your characters lose any sense of rationale. They become one note. They become very silly, and it becomes about how you get the girl, how you get the boy, rather than your character and how they are dealing with something that may be particularly important to them. It's just right. What can I do? And you see it now, and you see it in like Saved by the Bell is a prime example, wherever fucking Zach and Kelly would break up every 3 weeks. And she'd go out with somebody else, or he'd go out with somebody else, and the other one would try and sabotage the date.
Yeah,
and it's like it's an entirely fucking unhealthy thing anyway. And yes, okay, you know it's exaggerated, and you know the way that sitcoms work. You know that if they're together, they're going to be together, and it's all about getting back to that status quo, getting to that end point. You know it's coming, but it delivers a very unhealthy message. Actually, that's the normal thing to do. That's somebody who you were so fucking woefully unhappy with that you ended up breaking up a million times. You seek them out to then spoil any other chance they have.
Yeah,
and I kind of get it, right? And you see it in real life as well, where you get people who can't stay together. They break up every 2 minutes, but then every 3 minutes they're back together. And it's like clearly something's fucking broken in there. But your natural response is the least healthy option, whereby you say, right, I'm going to go out of my way to now do the fucking thing that's most destructive to me and them. And it would have been so tempting. I mean, they do it. So they did it a couple of times where they alluded to it, but the very last episode of Clarissa, where she's trying to work out where everyone's going off to college and where they're going to be in 20 years, and Sam becomes the first male to get into an all-girl college, and that's and he gets rejected by everywhere, apart from this one place who decided that they need to be more diverse, so they let a boy in. Only one in a college full of girls. So the last time we see him is that he comes up the ladder, and they're very friendly. They're very proud of each other because she's got this internship in New York and she's going to go off and be a journalist. And he's gone to college where he didn't think he'd ever get. He never got to college. He never amounted to anything. So he's got this win, but then they make the joke out of it that he says, "Oh no, I had the welcoming committee and they were really lovely. I'd love you to meet them sometime." And they're all at the bottom of the ladder waiting. So he calls up these three really fucking hot birds, and there's no jealousy, there's no cattiness. It's just this is my friend. This is my friend Sabrina, and they're going off to do something. And they're, "Oh, come with us." And she's like, "No, I'm going to hang out on my own." Not because she's jealous, but because she's going off to college or going off to this internship, and she wants to spend the time at home. And it would be so easy to play that she's not happy for him. She doesn't like what she's seeing.
Yeah, but they don't go down. She's too smart for that. That's why she's too much of a real person. Yeah, without falling into the tropes of being a neurotic fuck up, which is generally what people mistake for realism in this sort of thing. Oh, they need problems. Look, we all got problems.
Yeah,
but we're all not we're all not neurotic fuck ups. That's just not how life works.
You speak for yourself.
Well, I mean, yeah, all right, but you know what I mean. Like, I don't spend every week wondering how the world's going to end this week. I just get through it, okay? And a lot of the times I could get through it with a smile. Now, I'm fortunate. Some people aren't so fortunate, but that is not every person. And it feels to me every time you see something go, like if somebody wants to be gritty, if someone wants to go for realism, give them a load of problems, make it miserable, and they don't do that. They don't feel the need to instill conflict between the two of them, either for drama, because as I said, the story isn't motivated by that. These stories are so loose. But there's something, it's a little bit like Rent a Ghost in that respect, actually. Obviously a totally different style, that being very quaint and British, but a similar kind of thing of like, here is a really, really fucking, like, barely a story for this week. Here's a very loose thread that we're going to hang everything on. And now here's a bunch of stupid shit. Some of it you'll laugh at, some of it you won't. And this has a similar kind of feel, albeit a different setup. It's interesting you said about Sam and the ladder there as well, because that is, like, I always thought it was weird as a kid, but watching it as an adult now, you watch that with him just wandering up and you're like, right, on so many levels, how was that ever allowed? Like, how, first of all, is he bringing a ladder with him, or is there a ladder in the garden? Right? Because the ladder gets taken away, doesn't it? Every time he goes down.
Maybe it's just taken down, though, but maybe it's put away. I mean, they did it in Dawson's Creek as well, quite famously, with Joey going up the ladder every week. But they made a story point out of it that it was put there because she broke the fucking trellis when she climbed up it when she was like 10.
Yeah,
so it's a story point they've always done. And they tried to sort of laugh it off here as well in the first episode, whereby even downstairs he won't come through the fucking door. He comes in through the dining room or the kitchen window while they're all having breakfast.
I mean, it seems to me like, and again, supposition. I'm going to stop flagging up all my suppositions now, right? But I think I'm pretty good anyway of saying, look, it seems to me. This is me clearly saying.
Yeah, we don't know what we think.
But apparently I need to be clearer about that.
Sorry, Arthur.
I know that wasn't a dig.
No.
I'm taking it on board. Like, I need to be clearer about that. It seems to me like the obvious reason, like if this was me, and this is all I can do is think of like, why would I do this? Because with this choice there's meaning. If this was me, it's clearly so we don't every week have to have somebody from downstairs shouting, Clarissa!
That's exactly
Sam's here!
I read that again. I've read a couple of bits. I've done more based on the fact we did fuck all research last time and got nailed for it. I've actually done a very little bit of reading.
All right, we're sounding bitter now. We're not.
We're not at all.
Yeah. Whoa. Let's just hold our horses. Yeah.
But I mean, I did, rather than just read the one wiki page, I read like 3. But there was a comment from I can't remember his name. Mitchell. No, the guy who created it. Mitchell Kriegman, where that was kind of it. The reason he comes through the window is that we haven't got to waste time with him ringing the doorbell, somebody letting him in, him coming up the stairs, him having that awkward interaction. And not only that, I mean, I did that with friends when I was younger, and Christ, even so in my early 20s with certain friends, whereby you do just, you are there that often. You do just let each other in, you let yourselves into each other's houses.
Well, I've done that, but I've walked through the front door. Like,
well, yeah. But I mean, generally, because security is a bit of an issue. Certainly, at the time where I grew up, you didn't leave your window open.
No.
You leave a fucking ladder lying around. To tell you that much. But yeah, no, you do have that sort of that. So it's a kind of extension of that. I mean, and it never really, it never really twigged with me that actually isn't a normal thing to do. Okay, the ladder was just an extreme version of it. But yeah, letting yourself into your mates' houses and shouting hello to the parents who went straight up the stairs to fucking plug into the NES for a couple of hours. We thought nothing of that.
Yeah, I'm totally on board with that. Definitely, you just open the door and walk in. Like that was part of the course. But it's just there's something weird about the ladder at the window.
Well, there is, but I think it's just done as a device, and as I say, it's a filming device, but it adds to the comedy as well. It becomes a theme. So the fact that you hear the clunk of the ladder, and then you get that sort of that little riff that goes with it as well.
Yeah, he has his little opening theme,
and she doesn't look up. She just, hi Sam, and then you see him pop his head above the window frame, the windowsill.
Yeah, it's not so much the coming in; it's the going out. When she would carry on talking to end the scene, and you'd see the ladder just drop away. Like there's attention to detail there, right? Yeah. Look, there's attention to detail there on a level that I just wouldn't even have thought of. Like that, and I'd take my hat off to him for that. But it makes me laugh. And maybe it's intended to make me laugh. I don't know, but it's just vaguely ridiculous because then you've got this image of either he is gently laying the ladder back down against the side of the house. Or he's got it tucked over his shoulder and he's taking it. Or like maybe he's washing windows on the way back. Do you know what I mean? Like he's knocking doors, going like, "Wash windows for a $5, mate." Yeah. I mean, he always had the flannel shirt on, didn't he? So he could just whip it off, give it a bit of spit and polish, and do the windows on the way past. Maybe he was a chimney sweep. I don't know. He could have been any of these things.
Not in later seasons. He bulked up too much.
Yeah, but he was just randomly walking around with this lad. It's either that, as I say, or maybe there's like one of those hooks on the side of the house that you can just hang the ladder on. I don't know.
Who knows? We never saw the outside. Oh, that part of the outside anyway that I'm aware of.
No. He never. Did he ever fall out of the window?
I don't know. I don't think so.
Because I can't remember him falling out of the window either.
I don't think so, but it's a missed opportunity if he didn't.
Yeah, definitely. He should have fallen out the window and broken his arm in one episode or something. Yeah, it would be funny.
I think in the first episode as well. I mean, I don't know if you watched the pilot, but the very loose story is that Ferguson took Clarissa's training bra to show and tell, and everybody laughed because that's the sort of dick move the little brothers do. You know?
Yeah.
So everybody laughed, and she was embarrassed, even though she wasn't in the class. Her friend told her was told by her sister that it hadn't, so she was embarrassed. So she had this plan whereby she bought these fucking massive balloons, which she filled with helium, and conveniently had a bottle of helium in her closet. So
as you do.
So she was filling up these bottles, these balloons of helium, and she borrowed a straitjacket from Sam's aunt, who worked in an asylum, obviously.
As you do.
But they had to get it back before anyone noticed it was missing. And her plan was to get Ferguson into the straitjacket.
Do you think they noticed there was a crazy person wandering around?
Maybe they had a
straitjacket.
Maybe they had a couple of spares in case any new loonies came in.
Maybe.
But yeah, so the plan was to get him into the straitjacket, attach these balloons to him, and just watch him fly away and possibly fall to his death.
Like Joust.
Yeah, love it.
Stab the balloons as he's going up.
But what happened was, in the time it took her to get the straitjacket onto Ferguson and to get him outside, Sam managed to hold these balloons down for a good 5 minutes while the scene's going on. And just as they opened the front door, then he took off. And he floated into a tree. The branch popped the balloons. He fell and broke his arm. That was the nearest I think we ever got. And in the end of that episode, instead of climbing up the ladder, she had installed some sort of fucking winch and pulley system, because she was literally pulling the rope to bring him up the side of the house to get him in through the window.
I mean, that would be hysterical if that was like 2 years into the run, where it's an established trope that he comes in through the window. Yes. In the pilot, it's still funny, but it's not as funny. Like, if you're so used to him coming in the window that he has to have a pulley.
Yeah, and not only that, but you do it without explaining it.
Yeah.
So just at the, and you have the conversation while you're in there, but rather than the ladder, the first thing you see is her fucking pulling this rope. I know, and again, because she's only small. No, she's quite small at this point. I mean, she'd have been 15, 16 when she was filming it, but she's quite small compared to the people she's acting with, apart from Ferguson, apart from, what's his name, Zimbler, wasn't it? The brother, Jason Zimbler. Apart from him, she was the smallest in the cast, and she's there pulling this with this pulley. Where, don't get me wrong, I'd imagine there's other people on it as well lifting, but she makes a real fucking meal of it, because as a 14-year-old girl lifting up a 14-year-old boy on a rope coming up 2 stories, it's going to be hard work. But you start your episode with that, and all of a sudden you go, fucking hell, what's going on here? What is she up to? And then you see him and say, what the fuck happened to him?
Yeah, and then you can...
And then you do whatever from there.
Yeah, give you the whole flashback and stuff. But that is the way...
You could tell the entire episode in flashback, even though at that point.
That seems like something the show would do, to be honest, anyway. But yeah, that's funny in the pilot, but it would have been way funnier if they'd done that later on in the run.
Yeah, they haven't really into it at that point. I mean, you've only seen him do it twice. You've seen him come in through the bedroom maybe twice, possibly only once, and then once through the kitchen window. So they hadn't really earned it at that point.
No. Can you imagine, though, today, like, if you saw a fucking kid putting a ladder up against the side of a house and climbing in through the window, you'd phone the fucking police. Yeah. Like, you couldn't get away with that now. Like, you could just about get away with that in the 90s, I think, with people just go, yeah, that's just, Sam,
again, I mean, what he does. You wouldn't have in this country. In certain areas in the US, of some of the quote-unquote nicer states, and certainly in the suburbs, that problem, I'd imagine that was something that has been lifted straight out of one of the writers' lives.
Maybe.
But here, no, I mean, certainly by the time this show came around in this country, you wouldn't have fucking done it.
No, I still think it's just more of a convenient thing, so he doesn't have to knock the door and be like, "Oh, is Clarissa home, please?" And then they show him up and all of that stuff. But yeah, and that, we've talked about all the characters there as well. That is essentially our core cast as well. There's like 5 of them.
Yeah, it's family and Sam. That's it.
Yeah, and that's it. Occasionally, Clarissa will go to school occasionally, and you'll see some other people, but there's not really that many other recurring characters as such. I mean,
you've got a couple of recurring characters who are in like the odd episode. I think there's one in the end of the first series. He was bullying Ferguson, and Clarissa kicked his ass, and they ended up dating as 14-year-olds could ever, no, to the extent the 14-year-olds would date. But they dated on the show and from season 2 till season 4. But he appeared in 5 episodes.
Okay.
So even though he was purported to be an important part of the character's life and her development and all the rest of it, we barely fucking saw him.
Again, though, I guess that
doesn't suffer for it, though.
No, I was going to say, I think that comes down to the fact of it's almost like there's a conscious decision there to not have her swooning over this guy every episode because he's just the guy that she's dating. Yeah. Like, that isn't relevant information to us as her friend.
No.
Until she wants it to be.
Yeah. And we talked about Friends earlier. I talked about Friends earlier. And that was kind of the thing with the first seasons of Friends as well. So you had your core cast, and they were the bulk of the story every week. And then you may have had Gunter, you may have had Carol and Susan, but you didn't really have a lot of extras. Like Monica Ross's parents popped up every now and again. But by and large, you could go 5, 6, 7 episodes without seeing anybody other than the core cast and maybe Gunter if they're in a coffee house because they needed somebody to work the coffee machine.
And I think that serves 2 purposes, doesn't it? One is that it keeps your costs down.
Yeah.
And 2 is that it just invites intimacy with those characters.
I was going to say it cements your cast. It made you engage with those characters rather than trying to keep up. And again, coming back to Friends, you look at the end where there was so many fucking supporting characters. It was nigh on impossible to know who the hell was who.
Yeah, and that they've managed to maintain that through this show to the point of I haven't watched this show now for I guess 20 years probably.
Oh fuck yeah!
If not more.
I haven't watched this. I mean, it reran. It reran on Nickelodeon. I think Comedy Central had it in the very early noughties. Not for long. I might be wrong on that, but I vaguely remember seeing it being repeated when I was in uni. And it was decent hangover fodder, I've got to be honest.
I can well imagine it is. It's decent anything fodder, not to spoil the end of this podcast, but I've watched a ridiculous amount of this week if you haven't worked that out already.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, it was that sort of thing. And like, I forgot where I was going with it now.
I was about to talk about the intimacy that's invited with characters and the fact that I haven't seen it for 20 odd years, and then you picked up on that.
Yeah, because I mean it's pushing 20 years since I've seen it as well. Is the point I was going to make before I went.
Yeah, and so for me, like I was excited to go back to it, and because I hadn't seen it for so long, like I watched a lot of it. And when I say a lot, like I said, this thing was on every day and I watched it every day. It's not like it wasn't appointment TV. It wasn't like, oh, it's 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock, whatever, Clarissa's on, I've got to watch it. It just so happened that this was the time when I would have finished my dinner. And at this time I was playing in the brass band as well. That didn't start till like 7:30, so I had like an hour of TV time, and this was what was on. So I would watch this. It would kill that hour because fuck doing homework. So
not that nice.
Yeah. So I would watch this. So I spent a lot of time with this family at a kind of formative time in my life. Now, in the intervening 20 odd years, they've kind of been pushed down to the back of my mind. So we never really thought about it other than occasionally, Melissa Joan Hart would pop up and something. It's Clarissa. She's always Clarissa. She's never Sabrina. It's Clarissa. And then I sort of went back and started watching this. And within like a minute tops, I knew who everybody was. Yeah. Everything was comfortable. It was like a pair of old slippers. It was just like, oh yeah, that's what this is. And there's something really special about that. And there aren't many shows that can do that. Not adult shows and not kids shows. There aren't many shows pitched to any audience that can do that. I think that could just feel you could be away from for years. And you could just feel entirely comfortable just dropping back in. And I watched random episodes, mind you. I didn't see the pilot. I was just flat out randomly, a bit like I did with Sabrina, going, I'll watch one from season 1, one from season 3. There's a season 5. Just purposely hopping around just to see the development of the characters and the development of the performances, to see Melissa Joan Hart's teeth grow in.
Yeah, I mean, I did the same. I mean, I spoke to you a couple of hours ago, and I was struggling to find full episodes. I could find lots of clips, and I had enough from those clips where I could pull together what we were talking about. But I wanted to watch stuff, and I found lots of places that were willing to stream it, not at all legitimately. I found it. No, as I say, I found the link you sent me to the actual channel where stuff was where it's supposed to be. I found that was great. And yeah, so I watched the pilot. I watched 2 from season 1, 1 from season 3, and 1 from season 5, just for the same reason, just to see how the style had changed. And I mean, I don't mean the sort of the fashion style, but the style of writing, the style of performance, how the characters had evolved. And then how it ended. And it's one of these things I very rarely do. And this, let's say, this would have been on Live and Kicking. And when it first started, I used to play football on Sunday morning. And then I moved up an age bracket and I was playing on Saturday morning. So then I didn't see the last like 2 seasons of it. And it was only later on I got to see those in reruns. But seeing, going back and remembering how it ended, and there's the last episode is kind of like a flash forward episode whereby she's writing her last article for school, and it's where will people end up in 20 years. And Sam goes off to join like the fucking Space Force, and he's there in the cockpit of an X-wing because they couldn't afford the whole thing and the royalties and all the rest of it. So he's there flying through space, and then she's in this Murphy Brown parody where she's in a newsroom, and she's Murphy Darling. And she's breaking some massive story, and she's only able to do it because and the rest of the family are playing playing completely unrelated characters in this skit, and yeah, she gets to save the day. But it was a really interesting episode because she kind of went through, well, what are other people going to be doing? And it wasn't just about her; it was what are my parents going to be doing? What's Ferguson going to be doing? What is life in general going to be like for the Darling family? And it was a really interesting way of ending it. To which point, I was quite surprised. I mean, I read that a couple of years ago they were planning on rebooting it, or bringing it back, I should say, whereby based on based on the writer's novel of 2015, Clarissa is now an adult, and she has a family of her own. So she's explaining through a very different lens.
She's the mother, yeah.
And it was supposedly in development about 3 years ago, and it hasn't materialized. So what happened to that, I don't know. I hope it appears because I'd be down for that.
I'd pay good money for that.
Yeah, and the book apparently isn't that bad either. The 2015 book, it's called Things I Can't Explain. And again, right. She's now in her late 20s trying to make sense of her life, which has kind of gone the way most of our lives go, whereby you don't get to have the big dreams you have and the big things you're working towards don't necessarily work out, and you kind of live a version of the life that is closest to what you wanted. Mm-hmm. So I mean that was a really interesting take, and I only heard about that or read about that today. So I mean that's something I might look to pick up. But when Melissa Joan Hart was interviewed about that, she was like, they talked about picking up Sabrina, and they didn't really want to do that because Sabrina ended, and they very consciously got to an end, and that was partly because they had more time, partly because I think there was a clearer direction as to what they wanted to do with the show and when it was going to end, and because she was producing it or her company was producing it, they had a bit more control. Whereas she went on record saying that she would much rather do an extension or a revisit of Clarissa because it just kind of stopped. And yes, it got to that natural point where she finished high school and she was going off to start her life, but we never really got to find out what happened after that. I think that was kind of her thing, is that it just kind of ended and that was it, and we didn't get to see her grow up. And we'd seen her go from being this sort of the young teen embarrassed about wearing a training bra and talking about wanting to learn to drive and talking about crushes and talking about things that young teenage girls talk about, to a point where she was working towards being a journalist. She was working towards the end of school, so she had a goal. She was growing up. She was becoming more mature. But then we never got to experience her as that. And I think that was kind of her thing, where she wanted to go off and do it again, just because there's no sort of closure for the character really. It's a big opening at that.
Yeah, I think the nature of the show, though, and nature of the format is that it never would really end. It's the same as with a sitcom and with soap operas as well, as when the time comes to pull the plug, it's difficult to do that because it's kind of an ongoing narrative, or in Clarissa's case, no overarching narrative whatsoever. It's just about
it's just life, isn't it?
It's this character's life, and so you can dip back into that at any point and see what they're up to. And I very much feel like if that launched now and if it was done well, it would just kind of feel like you were catching up with an old friend from school, and just seeing what they're doing and what they did with their life and where they are.
I was going to say, I mean, we're at an age now where that happens. Where there are people I haven't seen since the day we left school, and most of them were cunts who I didn't want to see again, and that's why I haven't seen them again. But there are quite a few who I genuinely would like to touch base with. There's a girl who I got on very well with all through school who we hadn't spoken since we were 16, and then she turned up on a job I was on about 3 years ago, working for my client.
Yeah.
And it was like, how fucking small is that world? And then earlier this year, before the world went to shit, I ran into another old school friend who I hadn't seen since probably 2001. And we were on the same train every day. She just sits in a different carriage.
Wow.
And it's just, it's that sort of thing. But it does have that feel whereby you can quite say, we'll grab a coffee when you get a chance. And you do sit down and you have done sort of 20 minutes, half hour, where you are just catching up on all the shit you've missed. And it just feels very organic and very natural. I think you're right. That's exactly what you'd have here. And yes, okay, circumstances would have changed. So I'd say in the reboot that was talked about, Clarissa was the mother, so she would have a child, and her dynamic would have changed. But we'd have caught up with Uncle Ferguson, who's now not an annoying little dweeb. Presumably, he's an adult with functioning fucking personality traits. The parents would be fucking dodgy, not dodgy grandparents, but their role would change because all of a sudden their role as parent is kind of done because the kids are grown up, and they're now in grandparent mode where it's just fill the fuckers with sugar and give them back. Or must be experience there.
Yeah, Sam would have been locked up for breaking and entering.
Well, yeah, only if they press charges.
Yeah, so I'd be up for that, and I feel like yes, those characters would have evolved, but I don't feel like the show would be much different. I think perhaps it's more sophisticated and you move away from the canned laughter, but I think you can very much keep the flights of fancy. You can very much keep the direct to camera because actually all of that works. And like I said, this feels like the first through the door of those comedies, but actually those are tropes that have existed many, many other times in any of the shows. But this just seems to get them all right. The canned laughter is really the only thing that I can point my finger at and go, I really fucking hate that.
Yeah.
And even when the performances, like I say, when the gags are corny or the performances are pitched to the stalls, it's because of that canned laughter that I notice. Otherwise, I just go, yeah, but it's for 13-year-olds.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, they're going to find that funny.
In all fairness, she did a sitcom a couple of years ago with Joey Lawrence called Melissa and Joey. And she played a woman who had a normal job. She was a city councilwoman or something. She wasn't particularly exciting. She wasn't particularly high flying. But the premise was that she took in her niece and nephew when her brother went to jail because he was embezzling money. And Joey Lawrence's character was his employee who was implicated. Also, he had all his money, all his assets seized. So he was working as her nanny for the kids.
Right.
Fairly straightforward concept. It's two people from very different backgrounds bringing up kids together. Been done a million times, but that worked. And even in that, you get the sense that she's not playing Clarissa at all. But there are lots of similar characteristics because of the way she's reading that character, and the work she's done to go into the character where she is playing an everywoman. She's not playing somebody with superpowers. She's not playing a witch who's discovering herself. She's not playing anything spectacular. She's playing an ordinary, normal person, but in a very authentic way. And she just happens to be quite funny and quite corny and quite cheesy with some of the jokes she makes, like most of the people we know. Yeah, and most of the people everybody knows. So that we all have friends like that.
Yeah, I mean, my thoughts on Melissa Joan Hart were expressed, I think, implicitly over on the Sabrina episode. I think she's fucking wonderful. I think she's a superstar. I think, look, it's not like she's on her ass or anything, but I think she deserves to be far bigger than she is.
Yeah, I never understood her career trajectory.
Me either. But who knows? Who knows what happened there? And I'm not going to make any suppositions there either. And that, again, not a dig. I'm not going to. Who knows what happened in her personal life and stuff as well. Yeah.
And I'd imagine if we looked into it, there's probably quite a bit written about it because the time that she would have been going through that would have been tabloid-tastic. It was rife for that News of the World and whatever the American equivalent was it fucking Tatler and Inquirer and things like that, who just made shit up. So
also
well documented.
Also, when you really start digging into her backstory as well, you get her politics, and I don't want to. I like her too much to read about her politics. Because they're not pleasant. I'll be honest.
I've been thinking of this a lot lately because obviously the American election just happened, and that's all still fucking kicking off. And politics is a difficult one because, okay, no, as you know, the idea is that you don't get exposed to stuff until you're an adult and until you're old enough to make your own decisions and that. But we are very much indoctrinated from a young age. I mean, the area that we're from, we vote for left-wing parties because fucking right-wing conservatives fucked us all over. That's how it works.
People around here would vote for a fucking dog if you put a Labour Party badge on it.
Yeah, like exactly.
That's how it works around here.
And in all fairness, the ward that I'm in at the moment, we've actually got a decent Labour MP.
So have we, to be fair, and that's why I vote for them.
I mean, historically, the town I'm from, we had a Labour MP who had been imposed for about 30 years just because of the fucking ruin the Conservative Party had laid on the area and the decimation of pretty much all industry in the area, be it coal and steel and all the rest of it. So he was a fucking shoo in every election because he didn't even have to turn up. I think every election he turned up once to do some canvassing and to make a speech in front of the steelworks because it would look good on the news. He never fucking went to the town.
Yeah.
And he still walked it, and now he's fucking long dead. But successively, we've had 4 different Labour MPs for that area who win on a landslide every time. And so that's something that we do pick up. And obviously, that's the areas we're from, we're very badly affected by the Conservative governments of the 80s. So that, whether you want it to or not, that informs your politics. And so, I mean, a lot of what you grow up with does kind of stick. And I think that's something that Americans are finding now is that people don't pay attention to the issues. They don't pay attention to what's going on. They vote red or blue depending on what their state does or what their town does and what their parents did.
Yeah. And look, I'm not gonna get political on this show. We never have, not overtly, and I won't either. But yeah, that is something that annoys me immensely. You're entitled to your opinion, and I respect it, no matter who you are, as long as you can explain it to me.
That's it.
And that's very important to me, because if you can't, then
it's not your opinion.
Yes, yes.
It's somebody else's opinion you've picked up. And I mean, I've always said, I mean, we had it. I'll move off this very shortly, but when we had the Brexit vote in 2016, people say, "Oh, I don't vote. I don't know enough about it." Pick up a fucking newspaper. Pick up a fucking book. And and I know people. Well, it depends on which newspaper you pick up. It might sway your opinions, but you pick one up and you go, "Oh, I don't agree with that," or you pick one and go, "Yeah, that's fucking right, that is," and that will kind of sway you anyway. It will inform your decision without you realizing it. But to sit after, "Oh, I don't understand. I don't know enough about it," fucking horseshit. That's just lazy, and you kind of deserve everything you get then.
Or to say, "Yeah, well, I did that because my dad did it," or "I did that because that's what Facebook said." Yeah. Just understand what you're doing. Anyway, moving on. Sorry I brought that. Sorry. My fault for talking about her politics.
But it's a point that kind of stands because I mean her politics would have been informed by lots of things in that respect as well. So
and look, I choose to ignore them because I don't. That's got nothing to do with the show.
That's right.
So I choose to ignore that. She is an incredibly talented lady. I think she should do a lot more than she does. And I fight. I'm not getting. Well, I can't say it's going to make me biased towards the show because she is the show, and to me, I'd watch her all fucking day long. Yeah. I think she's magnetic. I would watch her all day long.
Yeah, but I would take Clarissa over Sabrina as a binge watch
every time. And look, there's less polish. There's less polish to her performance. She's clearly finding her feet. There's less polish to the show in general. It's nowhere near as slick as Sabrina was.
But again, that feels like a character-driven show, whereas this feels, as you said, this feels authentic. This feels like you are hanging out with a friend.
It really, really does. And I think I probably hit the best description of it earlier on when I said it was like putting a pair of comfortable old slippers on, because that's what this felt like. And for all, I remember just before recording the show, I thought I'd listen back to the Sabrina show as well, just to make sure I wasn't repeating myself. But I summed up there by saying Sabrina was kind of the televisual equivalent of lift music, in that it was perfectly inoffensive. It wasn't good or bad.
It just
was. I enjoyed it, and it was kind of carried through on the strength of its star. And I feel like this is that, but more so. This is that, but I actually enjoy it, and I would look for it. Whereas Sabrina, I wouldn't. It's like if it's on, it's on. Whereas this, like, if you were to tell me somebody was picking this up now and it was rerunning again, I'd be like, oh, okay, well that's on a Friday night or whatever. Now, I'm not going to make an appointment to watch it, just like I never did as a kid. But if I know it's on and I'm not doing anything,
Yeah.
I think I'd seek it out. It's just like, and the best comparison for me of late is just like Rent a Ghost. It just feels like a lovely thing to watch. Like it's wholesome, it's innocent. Occasionally it's very funny. Not, I mean, more gags missed than hit, but that is my age. I'm sure as a kid I would have found them funny because
not only that, I mean, it's your age, but also the fact they are quite dated now as well. I mean, they are very much rooted in the 90s.
oh my god, it's 90s. Oh my, I mean, we haven't even talked about the theme tune yet because that is another thing. Right now, here's another thing. We talked about the lack of a musical hook in Raggy Dolls last week, and that's the reason why it doesn't go around in your head. And we talked about how like that's one of the no shadow of a doubt, Raggy Dolls is one of the most memorable theme tunes of all time. And we said at the time, and I'm doing it now. As soon as you mention it, you have to play the whole theme through in your head, but it's a one done. You do the theme through in your head, and then it's gone. Fucking hell! I don't know how I managed to forget this theme tune existed, but as soon as I heard na 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 na, it's all fucking weak. It hasn't gone anywhere. And instantly, as soon as I heard it, I was like, "Oh yeah!" And now I can't get it out of my head.
Yeah, like I've been flicking around stuff all day, in between working because work's been a bit manic at the moment, and found clips and I put a clip on, and I was doing something. I've got two screens in front of me, so I was working on one and the clip was on the other, and that clip finished and I hadn't noticed, and then the fucking theme tune kicked in.
Yeah,
and I was like, oh fucking hell! And then I looked, and of course I couldn't remember the video of it until I saw it. And as soon as I saw her standing there in the all white background, I was like, fuck. I'm fucking 11 again. I was like, oh. No.
There is something genuinely Pavlovian about my response to that, to these credits.
Yeah,
it's like you say, it's transformative almost. You are instantly like a teenager again, and it's not even just her on the white backgroround doing the writing on the screen. It's even I remember the fucking outfits. I remember the outfits she was wearing in them.
Yeah,
like
because I didn't remember so much her outfit. I certainly remembered Sam coming on his skateboard and knocking the thing out of the way in his fucking green hoodie and looking at you about five.
She does the karate kick and snaps and stuff. I remembered it all instantly. It just instantly came into 100% clear focus from the second it started, and I don't think I've had that with any of the other themes that we like. There are some that I just know because I've never not listened to them.
Yeah,
things like Ulysses and Jace, I've always listened to. I was going to say awesome.
I was going to say they're better themes than you remember, but you remember those because they're fucking amazing.
I remember this one disappears to them. Yeah,
and with this one, it's just like, oh fuck, yeah, how did I forget about that? And in 6 weeks' time when we've had Christmas and shit like that, I'll probably have forgotten it again.
Definitely, and then that's great though, because then in maybe another 10 years' time, you could rediscover it again, and that's kind of what this show felt like to me. Was that I remember loving it. I remember, and I was a bit nervous about going back because so often when we really love a show, it disappoints us. And I remember loving it, but it just kind of lived in the back of my head in that very specific time period.
Yes.
Of like being in the front room of my grandparents between having dinner and going to band and just this being on the TV. And it was every weekday. It was always on. And that was just a real specific time period. But then that was lost somewhere in my head, and it would maybe pop in once in a blue moon. So to actually turn it on and just be transported back there is something magical about that. And it speaks to the quality of the show, not so much like now. Like kids today are not going to get it. There's no point showing it to a kid today because it's so 90s. It's so irrelevant to them.
And there's not really an equivalent to it either. There's not, I mean, not that I'm aware of anyway. Not that I don't spend my days scouring kids' TV channels, but I'm not aware of a show that deals with the same thing in the same sort of ways, in the same sort of style.
I think there's probably some on Disney Channel now, because this style of show seems to have moved over to like Disney XD's the action one. Yeah, it seems to have moved over to that kind of Disney sort of Disney mode. I think they kind of broke out with this whole thing with Hannah Montana and stuff like that. And and then so I feel like they've kind of picked up on this teen comedy thing now.
They have, but again, I think they all kind of had hooks as well. They did. It wasn't just about a girl being a girl. Yeah. They had to hang. I think iCarly was some sort of. I only saw bits of it. She was some sort of fucking genius or some sort of mad inventor, engineer type thing who could make shit. And so, and I may be wrong on that, and I may be thinking something different, but the one, whatever it was I did see, it wasn't just a person being a person and having a life and you sharing that life. It was, oh my God, there's something extraordinary. There's something to hang this on because kids don't have the attention. And even like when Nickelodeon went from this show, that they went, so they did Sister Keenan and Cal. They also did the Secret World of Alex Mack, which again I fucking loved because the whole concept of having, they unashamedly hung this entire thing on a girl who wasn't there swooning over boys all the time. She had shit to do.
Alex
she had
Mack
a fucking
never,
mission.
Yeah, that never connected with me, and maybe it was because
your age, I think, because by the time that came about,
I was aging out. You're right.
I said you'd have been about 16, 17 by the time they came out. I'd have been about 13, 14. So it was again, I'd have been sort of pushing her age as opposed to being past it.
I think it's partly that, definitely. I think it's also partly, again, compared to Clarissa, and it's the reason I'll take it over Sabrina as well, is that it doesn't have that hook. It isn't about anything. It's just so easy to put it. It's like the most modern equivalent I can think of to this show. And it's a stretch, but in terms of the feeling, like when I've got fuck all to do, I watch a lot of vlogs. Okay. Just because they're easy. You put YouTube on, you can watch vlogs, right? Specifically, I watch theme park vlogs. It's that similar kind of thing of like, well, I don't know these people and I'll never know these people, but I feel like I do because they're talking to me directly to me and inviting me into their world. And I feel like that is the closest comparison I can draw. And again, it is just easy. Oh, I've got 10 minutes. What am I going to do? Oh, fuck it. I'll just stick vlog on. It's easy. Wash over me.
Yeah.
That's what this is. It's comfortable. And I mean that as the best. Like, you could take that as a bad thing. You could take that as it's being played safe. No. I think that's absolutely what they were playing for. And so I mean that as the highest compliment I can possibly bestow on the show. I think they absolutely get what they play for.
Yeah.
And I think for that reason, it endures in me and probably other people of our age that remember it. But I don't think because it's so dated, it will bring anyone else in, unfortunately.
No.
I think this is always going to live in the 90s.
Yeah, I think that would be where they'd have to be careful if they do manage to get it off the ground and remake it. And we may have missed it. It may have come about and we've somehow fucking missed it. I wouldn't have thought so, but it's possible. But that would be a trap they'd have to fall. And I think that when you've had this, and you have it with so many shows whereby they do have such a big gap before they come back, like everyday life has changed. Like you put on a show from 2005, fucking there's no such thing as a smartphone. Oh, you did have smartphones, but they weren't commonplace. They were the fucking brick things that nerds had with a fucking stylus, and you were there fucking sending emails and shit. Apart from that, it was all flip phones and fucking Snake.
Yeah.
So you translate that now where you have you have smartphones that are more powerful than your computer. You have a tablet that can do everything your fucking your PC can do and send shit to the moon. That would have been unheard of. So to go back to a show like Clarissa, which is fucking pushing 30, you would be very hard pushed to recreate that without having to adapt it in a significant way to make it relevant. And that, maybe that's part of the charm. Maybe that's part of the comedy. Is that she there's only so far you can go before your kids overtake you with what they can do with technology. I know there's some form of theory behind it which says that your period of technological adequacy is about 3 months. And then you are completely outrun by it. Now, by the time you buy, by the time you go to if you buy an off-the-shelf computer, for example, by the time you get it, it's already been superseded. It's already out of date.
Yeah. And
that's kind of the thing with that is that you have to be so careful not to just show your age and to have outlived your usefulness and diminish the legacy.
Yeah.
And that would always be my worry. But then again, as you said, it's Melissa Joan Hart, and she generally, when she does things, she does them well and she does them properly. And so that she did produce Larissa and Joey, the two of them did. She produced Sabrina, co-produced it with her mother. She's produced various things over the years. I think she directed some stuff as well, hasn't she? But everything she does, you can tell. Some people phone it in, some people half-arse it. She does it, and she goes, right, this is my job. This is what I'm doing. And if it's my job for a week, or my job for a month, or the job for the next 10 years, this is what I'm doing. And you can tell that she believes in it. She's putting her all into it. So I think that if this thing does see the light of day, and so we haven't missed it, then it would be hard to swallow that character as now a woman in her 40s. But just give it a chance.
Do you know, I don't know that it would, because I'm a man just about to turn 40. So I don't know. I would just feel like,
I think that a lot of work would have to go into the character as a thing. I think that would be where it would fall down for me. The performance would be fine because, let's say, your performances are always good. I think it would, if it was going to fall down anywhere, it would be in the writing, and not getting the character.
Yeah, but again, as long as you've got, I think, as long as you get the tone right, I don't think you necessarily need to know what's gone on in the last 30 years. You just need to know where she is now, and who she is now.
Yeah, and you'll pick it up from her situation, what she's been through in the last 30 years anyway.
Yeah, and she will tell you over the course of the show. She will tell you. So I would be up for it. But if that never happens, I'm kind of glad that this is a thing that's still in the world. Like, you have to go looking for it now. As you say, it's not easy, but there definitely is a fan base out there that is keeping it alive.
Yeah,
and it is out there, and it's just nice to know that. Like I'm not. Once we're done with the show and we move on to the next one, I've not got time to go back and watch more of it. But like I said, if all of a sudden it was to be airing, and if at any given point I knew it was on, like I said with the vlogs as well, I knew it was on and I wasn't doing anything, hell yeah, I'll go and watch it for an hour, and an hour will probably turn into 2. That's what happened this week.
Yes.
I've been like, I'll just watch 1.
Yeah.
Then 3 later. You know.
Oh, fuck. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, what happened there? Where did the time go? Because you just get so just wrapped up in it.
Yeah.
It's just comfortable. And there's, right now, 2020, there's a lot to be said for comfortable.
Absolutely.
So yeah, I mean that's me with this show. Like, I can't find fault other than, it's cheesy now and again, but it's pitched at teenagers. Yeah. So
I think
it didn't bother me when I was a kid, so it only bothers me now because I know better.
I think the level of humor is it's pitched right, and I think that the difference is, let's say, we're rapidly fucking approaching 40, unfortunately, and things that would have made us laugh when we were 13, 14, 15 don't necessarily make us laugh now. Yeah, he says, knowing full well that throw a good knob gag in and we're in bits.
Well, look, dick and fart jokes will never not be funny, will they?
No, they endure more than anything else. But yeah, so I mean, that's natural that things aren't necessarily going to land now that would have 30 years ago.
Yeah.
But that doesn't make them bad, and it doesn't make them wrong. It just means that hopefully we're a bit more sophisticated now.
Maybe. Speak for yourself.
I said maybe.
Yeah. So yeah, I think that's about it for me. Like, I don't think, generally the longer shows tend to be ones where I've got an axe to grind. But there is no axe to grind with the show. I think everybody involved is great, from like top all the way down. I think everybody in the cast does really, really well. I think it's well written for what it needs to be. I think for its time, in fairness, it looks pretty fucking expensive as well. We've said about how a lot of these things would have been made to keep costs down, but at no point does it look like an inferior product.
But there's keeping costs down and there's not spending money.
Yeah,
they're two different things. And yeah, you're right. No, it doesn't look out of place. No, and I think that's the thing with it, is that if you were to look at it now compared to a show that was made, another show that's been made now, yes, it might look a bit tacky, might look a bit cheap, it might look a bit gauche and whatever else, but it was of its time and it served the purpose. And on screen, it looks good. The way it's shot looks good. The way it's lit looks good. I don't have any technical problems with it. And we're normally pulling story apart, we're normally pulling logic apart, and there's none of that because it doesn't feel the need to delve into things that would challenge that.
No, it almost consciously dares you to find a problem with that because it's not there, because they've gone, but this isn't about the story, so there is there is no fucking story. This is just what she's doing this week.
Yeah.
And that's it. She has one very specific problem that she's going to solve this week, and the problem isn't going to involve a fucking bank heist or anything mad. It's going to be, it's almost like you get to the end as well. Here's what I learned this week.
Yeah.
And in some cases, it fucking literally is that.
Yeah. Speaking of some problems of the week, have you seen the episode with Michelle Trachtenberg in?
No.
She's like 5 or 6. I was going to say, fucking hilarious.
She must be like a tiny person.
Yeah, I mean, Yeah, she was playing a very small bratty character that Clarissa was babysitting, who had a crush on Ferguson.
Right.
And yeah, it's just looking at that, and you don't have masses of big name guest stars. You've got her, Wayne Brady, and James Van Der Beek, and that's kind of it, really.
And you say big names at this point, they wouldn't have been big
Oh, they
names.
wouldn't. No, not at all. I mean,
They've just
Van
gone
Der Beek
on
would
to
have been
be
a
big
kid.
names.
Yeah, Van Der Beek would have been about the same age as Mr. John Hart. Hadn't done anything at that point. Wayne Brady, I don't know enough about his career, but I wouldn't have recognised him at that point.
No.
So yeah, I mean, they again, because they didn't go out their way to have a massive cast, you don't pick up these cameos, and we've seen in other shows whereby you have had cameos from people at the start of their careers, and they're memorable because people go on about them so much, but also they're forgettable because there's so many fucking guest stars in it. In this, I mean, they've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 recurring characters and about 10 notable guest appearances. I mean, you're talking an overall cast of for over 5 seasons of about 50 people.
Yeah, it's tiny, isn't it? Really,
But it works. You don't need it.
Yeah, and that's why they get away with so much, because it's enough for me to just know what those characters are doing this week. It is almost a soap opera, almost.
Yeah.
It's just the fact that it doesn't run forever and ever and ever, and it's got more of a sitcom setup. I've loved it. I've thoroughly loved rewatching this. I'm glad I have, because I really was nervous going back to it. I really didn't want to hate this. And thank I can't say it's better than I remember. It's not, but it's
what I remember, though.
It's no worse either. Yeah, it is exactly what I remember, and I think that might be the first time that's happened on this show.
If it has happened before, it's very rare.
It is, yeah, but it is exactly as I remember it, and that's just a lovely thing. It's a wonderful feeling to have something from your childhood that has been preserved, almost fucking fossilized, to be honest. I think that's lovely. I really do.
Yeah, no, I'm the same as I went into this a little bit nervous. More so when I couldn't find the fucking thing, because that's generally a bad sign as well. That nobody wants to put it out there. No distributors are wanting to pay for money to put it out there. No fucking bootleggers are wanting to put it out there either. That's when you know you're in trouble, because nobody's pirating it. And so to then find a proper channel and actually be able to watch it properly, and then see that it's actually it is actually for sale in dispatches. That was encouraging. But yeah, I mean, I watched, I think 4 or 5 episodes. Didn't have a great amount of time. Work has been a bit manic and other projects are kicking over as well. And yeah, so I put it on thinking, right, this is either going to be average or it's going to be dog shit. And either way, I'm not coming out of this with any sort of positivity, as normally happens, because normally the telling thing with this show is that we are considerably older than we were when we watched these things, so they don't translate as well. And I wasn't even pleasantly surprised by this. I was fucking amazed how well this has held up, and how just completely inoffensive and delightful it was. I could sit there and watch this all day.
Yeah,
if it wasn't for the fact it's getting late, I've been up since 3 and I'm fucking knackered, and I've got to get up at 3 again in the morning, I would quite happily stay up all night and watch this shit. If I was in the office tomorrow, that would be my shtick. I'd be right, I'll stay up all night and watch this, and I can stick this on my iPad if I was in the office, or while I'm working at home, I can stick it on my second screen and just let it play, let it play in the background. And I don't need to be watching for set pieces. I don't need to be looking for subtlety and little nods and little winks and anything else. I just need to listen to them talking.
Yeah,
and that's what it's about. And I mean, we've said before, sort of jokingly and not, that the stuff that we write and the stuff that we make, it's generally people talking.
Yeah,
and that may be why this appeals so much, because it doesn't have to be this bright fucking shiny endeavor to be entertaining.
No, you just need smart writing and a good cast.
Yeah, you need compelling
and this
characters.
Has both. Yeah,
that's it.
This has both.
So yeah, I mean, I may not have time, but then again, I will probably find time at some point when things calm down a little bit to go back and watch more of this, because I mean, having dipped in and out of it very briefly this week, I'm now thinking, right, I want to go back and pick out where some of these things happen, where we do see her teeth growing back in, where we do see where you have different writers coming back in, and so some of the subtleties of their episodes, because you always have that with Doug Petrie's episodes will be thematically they'll be the same, stylistically they'll be the same, but there's always nuance in some of the words they use, or some of their syntax will be different. And just picking up these things and picking up where the writers have developed, where the showrunners have developed, and just how this show has evolved in such a way that it hasn't become an incredible pastiche of what it started as. And that's what a lot of these shows do.
Yeah, oh yeah, you're right. At no point do I remember it as a child becoming a pastiche of itself. And look, I mean, I know kids are dumb, but I was old enough to have known better at this point if it was getting ridiculous. And as I said, I've watched shows from later in the run, and it's just as good. Yeah. So
I think you do get some like fairly childish jokes. Like there's one where I think it's from the first season, or the second season, whereby Marshall is trying to, he's trying to do something at school with like a parent-teacher thing, or it's like a career day or something, and he's trying to be cool, and she presents it like it's an old school horror film, so with the black and white, the black and white screen and the white titles and all the rest of it, and so the soundscape, but it's just really clever, really inoffensive. But then you move on from it, and it's an easy gag.
Yeah,
but and there's just so many things like that, and as the show goes on, the humor does evolve slightly because the characters get older. So that it's and it would be very difficult to have a 19-year-old playing a 15-year-old making jokes as though she was 13.
Yes.
So they've they've let the character grow up as they've gone through it. And I think that's really impressive as well. And to go back and see how they've done that's something I'd be really interested to see how they've just let that character evolve and how organic it's been.
Yeah, and I think a lot of that might come down to the style of, like I said, like you just touched on there are these slightly surreal elements where Clarissa will narrate what's gone on to you via the form of an imaginary skit where all of a sudden she's on the fucking moon, or she's underwater, or she's wherever she is.
Or a computer game she's coded.
Yeah.
Fucking randomly.
Yeah, so you get more sophisticated with those setups, I suppose, is what happens there. But yeah, I agree. If I had more time, I probably would watch more. I don't have more time, so I won't. But if I knew it was easily available, if it happened to be like on any given channel, and I could just go bang, there it is.
Yeah.
I mean, if it was on fucking YouTube, I'd be finding it on YouTube, and just go, I got 10 minutes, get on my phone, watch Clarissa. It's not on YouTube. It's not that easy. It is out there, as we say.
There are Nickelodeon have several channels on YouTube, and there were fucking like 9 of them or some shit like that.
I'm looking into this Nickelodeon streaming thing. I do have a prepaid American card, so if they'll take that, I'm all over that.
Yeah.
Tell you now.
But yeah, so talking about YouTube, so Nickelodeon do have an official channel where they do show clips, and they've edited clips together. They put titles and stuff on them, and it's all part of a bigger theme. But yeah, there's loads of stuff there. So if you can't find episodes and you want to dip your toe in, just Google, just YouTube Clarissa Explains It All, and go nuts.
Yeah, and look, if you don't remember it, then this is nothing. Like you're not going to get it. If you weren't there first
if you don't remember, you're not going to listen to us for the last fucking hour and a half.
No, if you never know. But if you weren't there first time, then this has got nothing to offer you, honestly. But
maybe it does. No, I mean, again, I'd be interested to hear that if people are watching it. People do off the back of this watch it for the first time. Let us know what you think.
Yeah, please do. And again, if we've got it wrong, like if you think this is a pile of dog shit, then
tell us why.
Yeah, tell us why. Again, we might make fun of you a little bit, but
no, we never do that.
Feel free to have a go back. I don't give a fuck. I've got thick skin. But either way, we're always happy to hear from you guys. And look, I am saying all of that with tongue firmly in cheek. We are always happy to hear of you guys. All feedback is good, and it is all taken on board. We do take it in. So yeah, let us know your thoughts.
Yeah. And with that in mind, if you do want to reach out to us, you can find us on Twitter at SMPDpod. You can go to our website, ddpodcast.net, where you can pick out our previous episodes, leave some feedback, which is what Arthur did for the last episode. On Facebook, with the Double Lump Podcast Network, wherever you get your podcast from, be it iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, Google Play, Amazon Music. Leave us a review, like, comment, share, subscribe. We'll get back to you as best we can. But until next time.
Were you thinking of sketches then? Were you up on a 90s vibe and you just had sketches in it? Is that what happened?
It's probably that I'm 4 beers in and I can't fucking remember what I'm saying.
That's probably more likely. So yeah, until next time, see you later.